Hello, as you can see, I'm just trying to set the camera up. I lifted it up a bit to try and get this in the screen, but when it was up there, I couldn't see the screen to see if you're commenting. I better just check too. The last one I did, the it wasn't turned on, the commenting, so yeah, done it again. I've had to actually turn it on. So it must have updated and it must be a new feature that it has. So I did a live, I don't know how long ago now, earlier today. And I promised I'd come back and do one to show you my progress on this needle book, this vintage Sanderson linen. I've been gone longer than I thought I would be, and that's because I was going to have a break and have some lunch and tend to Willow. She was getting a bit upset at the end of, towards the end of the video, and when I went in to tend to her to see what she wanted, she actually, after I'd turned the video off and was writing the title when I was saving it, she started barking at me and pressing all the buttons, her speech buttons. So I went in to try and work out what she wanted, and I couldn't work it out. And I finally worked out that she wanted a shower. She was hot. So I had to go and give her a shower. So that's where I've been, and that's why it's taken me a bit longer to get back here. And I can't sit here comfortably at the moment without leaning on my foot, and it's a bit painful. So forgive me if I keep bumping it. It's because my foot is hurting. I'm putting so much pressure on it, but I can't straighten my leg because there's a bar in the way. Hopefully when I move I'll get a better setup than this, so it won't be as painful to do these videos. I was just having a drink, I apologise. Oh, excuse me now, I'm going to have my throat sometimes makes funny noises when I have a drink, and it just did that. Okay, so back to the topic at hand. I did a video on this needle book, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, 13 days ago according to when I had a look. It feels much longer than that actually. And I haven't gone back to check it to see what I'd done. I can't remember. I think at that stage I had just sort of layered it and not stitched it together. I can't remember. But I have got pages in it, and at the moment they're really only tacked in. I haven't secured them properly, and I don't know if I'll secure them so you can see them on the spine this time. I'm going to try and do it so you can't see that pamphlet stitch along the spine. It's not there at the moment. You can see I've drawn a line down there so I can do it straight when I get to that, but there's no stitches down there. These big stitches you can see, they're just some of my remaining basting stitches. I've pulled most of them out, but I've kept some along here because I haven't finished doing all this blanket stitch yet to hold it all together. So I've kept those basting stitches in there for now just to hold that all together, or that will start to fall out. And I can see out here that we're covered in dog hair again. She did actually, I often sit in bed to work on this, but you know, when I can't sleep, I'll do some stitching. And I put it down last night, the other night beside me, and when I woke up she was sitting on it. Even though I had it in a bag, she'd managed to get it out of the bag and was laying on it, so there's a bit of hair on it. But anyway, this is a piece of vintage Sanderson linen, and this came in a kit that I bought from Beckett Sobe, this piece of fabric, and it wasn't quite the shape I expected, which is fine. but it's changed the way I've put it together. So if you've seen any of the other needle books that I've done or have started, they're usually a bit longer this way, a bit deeper. But this one is almost square because that's the shape of the fabric. Now it is wider, but I've ended up tucking it over to make a pocket because I felt it was a bit, I didn't like the shape if it was sat out like this. So I have, and again I apologise if I'm repeating from the last video of this because I can't remember what I did. I have started the blanket stitch along here to hold it all together. Now I think I did mention in that last video, I struggled to find the right colour. I haven't gone out and bought anything. I'm trying to use what I've got at home. I did try a blue cotton and it looked horrible. It just didn't work. I mean, I take into account what it's going to look like on the inside and everything as well. And then I tried an ecru and that didn't work because against this, it you know, this is almost white, and against the ecru, it just didn't work. It was too much lightness and it just didn't work with the rest of the page, the cover. So then I tried a yellow and I didn't like it. It just didn't work for me. And then I tried a rosy colour and that didn't work either. So I've settled on this sort of leaf green, and it was not one of the, certainly wasn't one of the first colours I would have thought of because there's no leaf green in there. It's more of a cool, like a hunter's green or a, I can't remember that, phthalo green, something like that. Yeah, more of a bluey green. And then, you know, like the purple's a cool purple. Even the yellow in here, it's a cool yellow. So to put this, to me, that's a warm green. I didn't think it would work, but when I look at it as a whole, I like it. I've done, you can't see them clearly because I haven't ironed off that biro mark yet. I drew a line down there to follow to try and keep my stitches a bit straight. They still are quite wonky under there, and that is going to bother me when I iron that biro off, but I've tried to keep them straight along there. So as you can see, normally I do the crochet all the way around, but I thought I'd wrap a piece of it's linen, but I can't remember the name of the colour. Like, it's a natural linen that I had. I've had that for years. It's a vintage piece. And when we open it up, I've lined it with a piece of vintage wool blanketing. Now that's not something I've done before either. I normally line it with another fabric. So yeah, I've done that this time. Again, you can see I haven't finished that blanket stitch. I didn't do the blanket stitch over this piece of crochet because it looked silly. It just didn't look right. So I've sort of gone behind it. It's done on the front there, but I've sort of done it so I've still caught the other side of that crochet to hold it into place, but I haven't shown any of it on the front there because it just looks silly. It didn't work. I need to press all these bits out again. They've been curling up as I've been working on it because I sort of sometimes hold it like this, and you can see they've rolled up again. You can also see on the inside of this linen, I've done that stitching again, but I've done that in a navy colour, and I sort of picked up that navy from this flower here. You can see instead of putting that lace along that edge like I normally do, I decided to, now I'd actually stitched all this linen down before I decided to put this in. So I had to unpick all that and unpick where I had stitched down that edge so I could then insert that crocheted edge in there, and then I had to stitch it all back down again and put these stitches back in again. And I tend to do that sometimes. I'll do something, put it together, and that's another reason why I've sort of just tacked this all together, because as I go along I think, oh, I could do this, I think that would look better if I do this or do that. So it's quite, these are quite dynamic as I'm working on them. I'm just checking to see if I've missed any comments. Sorry guys, there's nothing there that I can see. Then I've pulled this piece of embroidered linen from my stash. That was actually in my, I call it my scrap bucket. They're not scraps, they're bits of linens or vintage textiles that have got holes or stains, or they've sort of gone past the point where I feel I'm going to spend the time to repair them. So this was in there, and I don't know, it's the colours sort of don't really match, but it works. I like it. I did put, instead of turning this over, I must have, if you're wondering about my fingernails, I just want to point this out too. They're not dirty. I actually, a bit of skin sticking up there. I actually coloured my hair the other day. I haven't coloured it for, must be at least 6 or 7 years. And when I was cleaning my, well, started to clean my bathroom cupboard the other day, I noticed I still had a couple of tubes of the hair colour in there. And I used to have my hair this colour all the time. It was never not this colour. Especially when I worked at the art studio and I was teaching, it used to be purple all the time. And I think in one of my profiles I've got purple hair. But anyway, I decided the other day that I'd colour it again in time for our Christmas party last week and for the Santa run. I wore gloves on my hands while I did it. I wore gloves while I washed the colour out. But since then, every time I go near my hair, every time I touch it, I'm getting colour transfer everywhere. And this is why I haven't coloured it for so long. So I have just washed my hands again before I've sat down here to make sure I don't transfer any colour into this. Fingers crossed. So back to this. Normally I'd fold that over and do like a French seam, but I decided to put some vintage bias tape on it this time just for something different, and I felt that it grounded this piece better than just having that raw white edge. So I went through my vintage bias tape collection, which is a massive bag now. I think I've got 80 odd bias bindings. I'm going to have to start destashing some of them. They're all different though, that's the thing. That's why I've kept them all. They're all different. You know, I might have 4 or 5 greens, but they're all different greens. I might have, you know, anyway. I pulled this colour because it's the closest to this colour. Now I tried a yellow and orange, I tried this sort of bluey green, I tried this sage green, but they didn't anchor it as well as this colour did, so I've ended up going with that greeny colour. And I feel like it's sort of, as a whole, even though nothing really matches, it works. And I like how, I like to see the different layers peek out from underneath as well, and I'll talk about this when I get to that. So when I turn that page over, normally I'd cover that back over. I don't normally like looking at the back of the work. It just breaks my brain. It feels to me like it's unfinished. But this particular one, I quite like it. Maybe because it's quite neat. So I don't think I'm going to cover that one. I might just leave it like that. Now this page, if you recall, was a piece of, I can see dog hair again, a piece of hand dyed vintage. I've had this piece probably for at least 20 years. Hand dyed vintage wool blanket in this one, and I bought this from a quilting shop many years ago. I had this green, an orangey colour, which I've got a bit in here, a purple. I can't remember if I had other colours, but they're the only ones I've got little bits left of, and I've used it in many projects. It was very expensive, this stuff, at the time. And I must have bought large amounts of it at the time because I've still got bits and pieces left after all these years. But that's the hand-dyed wool blanketing. I didn't have intentions of covering that much of it. I may have, last time I showed you, done this blanket stitch. Now that thread's actually linen. That's a vintage linen thread. I bought at a friend's shop a couple of months ago in a like a bag of crochet cottons, and there was a couple of balls of this in there, and I was going to move them on or re-gift them, but I really love it. It's a beautiful thread. It is hard to, it's a little bit challenging to stitch with because it's linen, it splits. So I should be stitching with short lengths. I'm not. I'm pushing the boundaries and using long, ridiculous lengths that you shouldn't do. But I've stitched that around there, and I quite like that. And I sort of feel like, given, you know, the colour in here and the little bits that peek out underneath, I think that yellowy colour works well. As you can see, I then had this brainwave. I've got this piece of vintage, this is just sheeting, and it's a beautiful sheet. I have been cutting it up quite a bit. It did have some blue in it, which I started to thread paint up here, and then I didn't like what I'd done. So I stopped that quick smart, and then I stitched around the edge of that sheeting, and I didn't like it. I didn't like that raw edge that I could see under the cotton thread. So then I decided to come along and do this weave stitch over the top of it. The only thing about this is, my goodness, that's bulky. It's added to the bulk quite a bit, and it's covered more of that wool blanketing that I intended to. But that's where we're at with that. I don't think I'm going to unpick that now because I would have damaged the wool too much. Now, this is where it gets interesting. I tried really hard to only stitch this in the top half of that piece of wool blanketing, which is quite thin. It's more like doctor's flannel actually. It's not as thick as blanketing, because I didn't want any of those stitches seen on the back side, and that's the back side. Now, you'll notice that I've stitched a piece of lace on here for a pocket, and the reason I've ended up doing that is because I could see a couple of stitches that had peeked through. I tried to unpick those bits, but I couldn't trace back to exactly where they were coming from, so I've just put this pocket in, and I feel like with that there, I can't see, all I can, if I look closely out here, I can see a couple of stitches peeking through there, and there's still some basting stitches coming through as well that I need to trim off. But unless you look really well, I can't see those stitches on that page, you know, at first glance anyway. I've then put, I think this was in there last time, this is so fine and delicate, this lace, to the point where I can barely feel it in my hand as I turn it. Now, it does have some stains on it. This was given to me by a friend, and it was given to me because she was not able to sell it in her shop. It's not something that she would like to sell. So these bits and pieces that most people will look at as garbage or scrap, she saves for me because she knows I can use them in some way or another, which I'm incredibly grateful for. Now, this was a larger piece of lace, and potentially I could have done a double spread, but I didn't want to, so I've trimmed it along this edge here and I've stitched it in. I've just noticed there's a bit of a tear there. I don't know if I've done that or if I missed it when I've actually come along and repaired torn bits along here. I haven't done these bits on the outside, but I've patched it up here. I can just see it when I'm looking. I've patched it up here, I've patched it up in here, and I think I did a bit more patching in here. So I've just noticed another hole over here and a tiny one there, so I'm going to have to come along and patch those up as well, I think. And the reason why I'm doing that is because it's so delicate. If I don't patch that up, it just keeps tearing as you're turning the pages. So I have done a little bit of repair on there. It is hard for me to see. I can see some of it because I know what I've done. So I've done some along in here, in between here. I've done some here, along here and through here. And I think I did a bit more in here and down here. So I'm quite pleased with those repairs actually, because they're hard to see. I think though, I left a tail, so there's a tail in the middle here somewhere that I shouldn't have left. I did a knot. I shouldn't have done a knot. I should have done an overstitch. But anyway, I think it would be hard to see unless you knew it was there. Next page, I've got this sandwich tray cloth. I think this was in it last time, the last video. And, you know, I like that. It works well with the layers. The colours work well. It sort of pulls it all together. But then again, I don't like to see the back of the stitching. I don't like to see the back of the work. So I've appliqued a feed sack Suffolk puff over there. And I was going to do more applique, but I actually quite like the back of that peeking through. I just got my fingernail caught on that lace then. I should trim my fingernail. That's got a jag on it. So I quite like these little embroidered points that are sticking out beneath it, the back of them. That doesn't bother me. I think it adds to it. And because it's almost the same colour that's carried through in the dots here, I think it works well. And then that colour's also repeated over here and through here. So then we come to this beautiful, beautiful, stunning feed sack quilt block. And again, I bought this from Beck. Now these kinds of things I normally just hoard. I wrap them up in tissue and I store them in a little box somewhere, and every now and then I pull them out and look at them and stroke them. And then a couple of weeks ago I thought, you know what, I probably should use them, because if I don't use them, someone else will down the track, won't they? So I'm really enjoying this. I love looking at it. I love stroking it. I probably should stop stroking it because it's looking a little bit grubby. I'm really bad for that. So I put that block in there. Now, I think a lot of people I've seen would have left the other side raw and exposed so you could see the joins and the work that's been done. I tried to leave it, but my brain kept going, no, I can't handle that. So I've ended up, oh, I forgot about that. I ended up stitching a doily onto the back of it. Now this doily came in the kit as well. I'll tell you which bits came in the kit, like the cover did, and then I think that's all. And so far, I think this puff did. This particular one might have. I'd have to double check. This didn't. I bought that separately. That was in another pack of vintage textiles, I think, from memory, that I bought. I only bought it recently. I shouldn't be forgetting. This doily came in the kit, the needlebook kit. And then I'm just been playing around that. I feel like that's just too open. I did think of stitching some wool, some doctor's flannel or something on there, and I may even still do that, but that's going to increase that bulk even more if I do that. I'm just not happy with how stark that double page is. So I've been playing around with this. It's definitely not the same vintage as a lot of these other things. It's probably 80s, 90s bridal lace, this bit. It's been cut off a bridal gown. It does have, out here it looks like there's yellow stains or rust stains on it. I thought it was the sequins, because there's sequins on it as well. But it does have stains, but you know what? I quite like them. I don't mind the rust stains. So I've been playing around with whether I should applique that on there. It's still quite stark when I look at it as a whole. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do there. We've sort of got the repeated orange colours happening, peeking through. So yeah, haven't decided on that yet. Now, the other issue is, I don't know if you've noticed, this page hangs out quite a bit compared to the others. And when I close it, she's still hanging out a bit. I was going to rotate the page through a bit more so the join would be over here somewhere, but I didn't want to lose that effect. I don't want to lose that, because it just won't look right to me. That'll be probably all you'll see if I move it, slide it through a bit further. So what I'm thinking is, just while it's not been used, maybe just fold that over so it's not hanging out everywhere, because I don't want to cut anything off, I don't want to tuck any more under. So maybe that's the only solution I can come up with at the moment, to keep that bit just tucked under while it's wrapped up. So then you can obviously see I've got this beautiful piece of linen. Now this is that's the front of it. I was going to say it's the back. Look at that. I reckon that's probably Battenberg, but it's probably the finest I've ever seen. It's a beautiful piece of lace, that. It's absolutely stunning. And I agonised for ages whether to cut that up. Excuse me for a minute, I've got this pull on my fingernail and it keeps catching on the laces, so I'm just trying to trim that off, of course with my fabric scissors. You see all those memes of, you know, the kids or the husband over to touch the fabric scissors. I think I'm the worst offender of anyone. I'm just going to take a drink, guys. I'm getting thirsty. So I've put this. Now, the other thing with this that I'm not convinced works is it is very stark white compared to all the other pieces in there. So that sort of messes with my head a bit. Potentially I could tea stain it a bit and age it up a bit, but I don't really want to. But that bright stark white does bother me a little bit. I think too it's worse because I'm outside and there's more light. So yeah, I'm still not entirely convinced this will stay. I do love it though. So then of course I've got this, the orange hand dyed wool, and for this piece I've done that leaf green around it. Turn my sound up. I don't think I can. It's maybe because I'm not close enough to the monitor. It's a bit further away from me. So maybe if I move it down a bit closer to me, and when I look away or look down, I'm not speaking into the microphone either. Is that any better? Is that any louder if I'm looking at the microphone? Oh, I can't get any closer. It's almost in. Let me see. Okay, I've just turned the sound up. Does that help? I don't know if that will make any difference. I've never really come across this before, so I've just turned the volume up. Hopefully that will help. I need to get a microphone. I did have one, but it's not compatible with this phone. So I think I need to get a microphone. That would be more helpful. I have actually gone back and looked at some of my previous videos and I've struggled to hear myself. So I do apologise. I'm trying to get closer now. So now I'm up to this orange wool. Now I deliberately put a short piece in there because I want different layers. You know, I don't want to have all the pages the same length. I want bits peeking out and I want, you know, different things happening. Sorry, I've had that many cars pulling into my driveway today. I don't know why, but they distract me. So I've got this piece now. Again, I don't think this is going to stay. I don't like that now when I go through it. It doesn't, I just don't feel like it fits. It's the wrong vintage for the rest of the book and it just doesn't work for me. So I think I'm going to, actually I should do that now. Oh, thank you. Oh, Gina, hello. These ones I didn't. These are pieces of, it's pretty much doctor's flannel. It's quite a thin wool. But I bought these pieces years ago, the orange, the green, that's up here. And I've got a purple as well. I bought those, must be at least 20 years ago, from a local quilting store that is no longer here. I ended up actually, I used to walk into that store and just be in complete awe. She had some amazing things in there, and of course all the fabrics and all the giftware and all that. Like, she had some amazing stuff, and I used to walk into that store in complete awe every time. And I eventually, years later, ended up getting a job in that store, and it was just amazing, and I loved it. And that's one of the reasons I've ended up with I don't have any a lot now, actually. I've passed a lot of them on, but I had a huge stash of quilting fabrics. I still do have quite a few quilt kits here that I'm reluctant to let go of. I still haven't put them together. I had a really bad experience with the first quilt I did, and I haven't finished one since. I made a beautiful quilt for my son for his birthday one year. I put so much effort into it. I pieced it all. I was so proud of it for my first quilt. It was a large queen size quilt, and I quilted it myself on the gammal at work, and my boss let me stay back after hours to finish it for his birthday. And I was so proud of it. And maybe 12 months later we had a big storm and there was damage done to the house, and I didn't realise until weeks later that the quilt had become wet, and in doing so it had gone mouldy and disintegrated. And I've never done another quilt since, and I've still got bits of it sitting here that I probably should get rid of because I get upset every time I look at it. So anyway, that's a bit of a story about the quilt shop where I got the wool from. It is hand-dyed wool, and that's how it was when I bought it, but I don't have much of it left. I've been using it. Does the food colouring hold? If you wash it, does it stay in? I haven't tried food colouring. I actually used to have a business where I dyed wool for a living. So I have somewhere packed away the proper wool dyes. And I have dyed some vintage blankets. I do have some pieces in there I've dyed in the past. I've got some stunning colours. I actually got online recently to buy some more of the dyes that I used. There's a local lady who has had a business here for many years, and I like her dyes much, much better than the landscape dyes, because in my opinion, I might be wrong, but in my opinion the landscape dyes have fillers in them, so the colour doesn't go anywhere near as far. Okay, dye in lukewarm water. See, when I've dyed wool in the past, I've pretty well cooked it. I've put it in a heated pot until the dye's all exhausted. Yeah, I've thought of that too, actually, Gina. I've sort of just got bits. I think I've got mainly the outside bits of it left. I'll dig it out. It's sitting folded up in a tub in the laundry still. So I haven't washed it yet. I need to probably put it in some soaker and give it a good wash. And a lot of the colour had run as well when it got wet. So I probably should retrieve what I can. And I did consider retrieving the pieces I could, and then pretty much what you've suggested, quilting another piece or laying down some layers and then piecing the remnants on top of it and then creating a whole nother quilt. So I have considered doing that. It's just a matter of time and, you know, trying to go through to destash all these stuff. No, it doesn't mat. What causes wool to mat is when it goes, when you shock it. So when you go from hot to cold suddenly. So if I was to, for example, put it in, cook it, boil it to exhaust it, and then put it straight into cold water, then it's more likely to mat. I used to do, although it's friction as well, movement and friction. So the combination of that shock in temperature and the friction is what tends to cause the wool to mat. So I not only did wool fabrics, I used to dye wool yarn as well. And when you take that out of, the way I used to do it, when you take that out of the cooker, I used to pretty much dump it straight in cold water. But I'd let it sit there and then I'd come back later when it had cooled down and, you know, do what I had to do. I've never ever had any wool mat on me unless I was doing felting. So yeah, it shouldn't, going from hot to cold in theory on its own should not cause the wool to felt, in theory. So back to this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to unpick this because I don't like it. I don't think it works. Geez, I'm really concentrating, aren't I? Go really quiet. I can hear machinery down the back. I don't know what it is. It's distracting me. It's not a lawnmower. It sounds like a... I don't think it's a wood chipper. It's some sort of thing. I don't know what it is. Crikey, I've really stitched this on, haven't I? I know I'm using my unpicker the wrong way. I should be going this way, but I don't like using it this way a lot of the time because, especially on this sort of stitching, it tends to grab hold of the fabric and cuts into it. So I like to use the point and pull out what I can see. And yeah, I'm using it backwards. If you didn't know, unpickers are supposed to be used with the ball heading in first. Oh, lots of concentration happening here. I'm trying hard not to tear the wool or to put a hole through it. And of course I blanket stitch that. Yeah, I have the same issue, Gina. I can't, it's very rare. If I've got a straight seam in a piece of cotton, like a, you know, a quilt or a garment or something, a straight seam, I can use it that way the majority of the time. But usually with this sort of work, if I use it that way, I will cut into the fabric. Even on, you know, garments and things. So that is a piece of vintage textile that came in a kit from Beck. I actually think it might have been a bit of ribbon because it's overlocked down these sides here. I've turned that over and I've got a feeling it might have been a bit of ribbon. Inside it looks like it worked, but out here I don't like it. So I've pulled that out. Let's pull these threads out. Now I will come along later. I don't have them out here, but you can see, I don't know if you can see, I've left holes in that fabric where I've stitched it. Now that is partly because the needle has forced those fibres open, and it's also partly because it's actually torn the fibres. So what I will do later is come along with my felting tool, because this is wool, and I can sort of just felt those back together. I'm just using a pin, sort of works. So I can sort of just manipulate those. See, you can't see them now where I've done that. So I will patch those up a bit. Now, got little cotton strands everywhere. I was playing around with attaching something like this because I feel like that sort of carries over this stark white a bit more. I'm not sure if this will be the piece I'll use, but if I do, I'll sort of eliminate this bottom bit, whether I tuck it under or wrap it around, I'm not sure yet. So that sits a bit better, and I could potentially, it's a bit wide, but I can work on that. I could potentially turn that into a little pocket sitting on there. I still want wool exposed because we want to use that. All these little bits of wool, we still want to be able to use them to put our pins and store pins and needles and safety pins and things in, because it's a needle book. So there's that page. This next page I'm still not happy with. I need to redo this, I think. So as you can see, I've stitched this piece. This is a piece of vintage French fabric that I bought from Nairi. I bought a little tin of little pieces of That's very interesting. One of the ones I got was in the same condition, and I didn't use it. Yeah, okay. I'm with you. I actually put my piece in my scrap wool bag and cut another piece from my stash. Yes, and maybe we got a piece from the same blanket. Because yeah, the piece I had, there were sections that were very stretched as well. There were matted section and stretched sections. Now some of my blanketing has done that, and I think it's because I washed it with other blankets and it has felted some of the wool. So again, in that instance, that's a good idea. In that instance with my blanket, it's because I washed it with a couple of other blankets, and the friction on that particular blanket had caused sections of it to felt, and it seemed to be the pieces that were more thickly woven. So because those blankets are woven into checks, so it's almost the way they're almost woven the same way that a kilt would be, I suppose, in a different scale, but you know, the colours are woven. So in some of the sections on some of these blankets, where they cross over, it's a bit thicker. And what I've noticed is when you wash them now as vintage pieces, I mean, some of these blankets are 60, 70 years old, you know. Goodness knows what they've been through. And yeah, I have noticed, I have bought a couple in the last 12 months that when I've got home are in that condition. But there's one I can think of in particular that I have washed, and I'm fairly certain it went into that washing machine looking quite normal. And when I've pulled that particular blanket out, it looks like this. It's all wonky, it's misshapen, there are sections that are quite clearly matted, and then there are bits next to it that look like they've been stretched out of shape, and I think it's just because those other areas have matted in, so like felted so tightly. Some of it I have been able to retrieve, you know, the little felted bits in the middle, you know, we can still use them in little needle books or for patches or something. But those pieces that appear to be stretched, they're still usable, but you've got to really cut a generous, come in from the border quite generously, because you don't want any of those felted bits still attached, because it still makes it sort of pull in and pucker. So yeah, they are usable, but you cannot, you can, and I have done it, you can relax those fibres. So you can put them in hair conditioner, in cold water, cool water, soak it for a while, and you can manipulate them and relax them so that they can be recovered, but it's laborious and tedious, and you've got to be careful not to manipulate them too far, because then you're just going to stretch them too much further, and you know, it can be done. But yeah, I think that's what has happened in those instances, because yeah, as I mentioned, it has happened to me. So back to this piece. This is a beautiful piece of vintage French fabric that I bought from Nairi. That was pretty much the size of it. All I did was trim it to square it up. Now this side was square, it's just the way I've stitched it. I've stitched it quite wonky, and you'll see even more so in a minute. So as you can see, I tried to stitch this parallel to this line here, this stitched line. It's moved, even though I drew a line and I basted it, it's still moved, and I think I know why. So, and I think I'm going to unpick this and do this again as well. I've done this as a little flap, so when you open it up, there's a little bit of that wool blanketing in there. You think I should embrace the one? Well, that's what I keep telling myself. But then another part of my brain is telling me that if I do decide to sell this, is it sellable in that shape? That's the thing I'm struggling with. I don't know if I'm going to sell it yet. It's just going to depend on whether I need the money. And at the moment I do. I'm still paying vet bills and goodness knows what. But yeah, that's what's going through, the things that are going through my head. So yeah, I don't know if I'm going to embrace the wonk on that piece or not. But I was quite happy. Yeah, there is some wonk happening, which breaks my brain, as you probably know. But I do quite like, I'm quite happy how this worked how I wanted it to. So when you open it up, it actually just looks like that is completely stitched onto that piece of fabric. You don't realise that it's a flap and it can be opened up. So I like that. I'm happy with that part of it. So let's turn this page over. This came in the kit. Thank you, Jude. Oh dear. So this was I think it was a napkin. It's a little bit too thick to be a hanky. I suppose it could have been a hanky. It's not. I do have some hankies that are this thick. But anyway, this piece came in the kit. I ended up chopping it up to fit in here. I have done a hem at the top here. I've tried to do an invisible stitch on the hem up here. I've rolled it twice on the other side, on the back side. And then because I had that lip there where I'd folded it, it just felt incomplete to me. So I've ended up stitching this piece of lace on. I'm still not sure what I'm going to do with this bit yet. I don't want to just cut it off because it will fray. So whether I end up, when I unpick this to piece it all together properly, whether I tuck that under there, I'm not sure yet, but I need to address that. Now, even though I struggle with having stark open spaces, I'm not sure if I'm going to put anything there. Part of me wants to. I mean, I could put a puff there, or I could put another piece of lace or something, but what I'm struggling with now is I'm getting a lot of bulk happening. Yeah, it does actually. It's a bit like, I don't know if this is what you mean, but I go through some of my pieces now. Not that I have many left. I've sold a lot of them. But some of the pieces I come across, when I start to handle them, instantly my brain goes to where I was and what I was doing as I was stitching it. So I picked up a piece a while ago, and all of a sudden I remembered that I was stitching that in the car while we were traveling. So sometimes it's not great memories, but yeah, I don't know if that's what you mean. It's like all those parts of, all those components of our life and where we were and what we were doing at the time, are sort of all stitched into it, aren't they? So this is another piece of lace that I got from my friend that she didn't think she could sell. And when I first saw it, I thought, I'm not going to use that. Potentially I could use it in one of my mixed media books, my grungy ones with my eco-dyed pages in them. But then I thought, you know what, I'm going to put it in here. I quite like it. It's, it's rusty, but it works. I like it. So I've embraced that and I've put it in here. And this is another one that I've done some repairs on. So I've stitched these bits back together along here. I've stitched some down here. I think in here. And I've done some up along here as well. Now again, some of those bars are a little bit thick. Again, I've repaired these sections because they were starting to tear. And if I didn't come in and do some running repairs in there, as this was being used, that would just continue to tear and it would disintegrate. So because it's on that edge, in theory, because I've strengthened these joins, that should stop that happening in the future. So So here's another piece that we can see the back of the work. But again, I don't feel like I need to cover that this time. I'm quite comfortable with leaving that one as it is. As I mentioned earlier, my brain normally tells me I need to cover that up. I'm happy to leave that one. We come over here. Now this is where it gets a bit, this is what I'm struggling with, this area. As you can see, I've left this flap from this piece of the napkin. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, I don't like to cut these off. I like to try and utilize them in the book somehow. So this piece, I've attached this flower, which again is made from feed sack. And if I attach it this way, we can appreciate both the front and the back of those textiles. So I think I'm going to leave that, but where I'm struggling now is I've got this other piece of fabric, piece of linen that came in the kit from Beck. I'm pretty certain it was a tea towel at one stage. So I've got this strip of linen that I love. It came in the kit. Now what I'm wanting to do is, with this piece, fold this bit in about here. Look, it's got blinking dog hair on it too. Fold this bit in, and potentially there's the woven edge, there's the selvage. So potentially I could stitch that down here. Now I need to trim this, it's not square. I need to trim this before it goes in. And then I'm going to have to trim some of this off because it's just too wide. So we'll pretend that I've trimmed some of that off. And then I will potentially have, so what I'm trying to be aware of is I want to utilize these stripes as a feature. So if I can manipulate this the right way, I can have that as a very deep pocket on one page. And then this one as another pocket on this side, and that would be featuring that blue stripe. But I need to sort of try and align that neatly with that stripe as well. And then when it's closed, again, I have to play with this a bit to see exactly where it's going to fold once I piece it together. I thought about that, but then I thought if I cut that extra piece off, I can use it in something else. Because potentially, oh yeah, okay, I see what you're saying now. So actually make it so I can open it out even bigger, is that what you mean? I hadn't considered that, so I could sort of, when it's opened, it can be opened like that. I didn't think of that. Then I'm just going to want to applique more stuff in there, which is going to add to that bulk again. It's going to be such a chonky thing. Yeah, I didn't even think of that, Jude. Thank you. That never even crossed my mind. Okay. That's given me something to think about. Thank you. That never even crossed my mind. So potentially, if we get this together, and then if I do I like that idea actually. Okay. But then I've started to applique something on the front of this. I keep trying to tell myself that. So I'm not sure whether to add this bit in here or add it, I think it might be better here because then we're mirroring the blue. So I'm wanting to put that in here, but I'm not finished. Maybe I am because I can't find it. Here it is, it's in the wrong box. I've got a piece of doctor's flannel here that came in the kit, which again needs to be squared off. And it's, surprise, surprise. Yeah, that's true. It's got dog hair on it. So I'm thinking of adding this to the center of this bit. So it'll be attached here somehow. So that double spread should look a bit like that. We open that up. We'll potentially have a pocket here. Then we've got some wool. And the reason I want to get this wool in is because I don't think I've got enough in there, considering it's a needle book. So we then have a double page spread here, which my brain usually tells me I need to add something else in the center of that, but I'm hoping I won't, because it's just going to be too bulky. Most other ones I've seen and done have like a doily or something in there as a feature and to sort of hold it all together. But I don't think I will be doing that. She says, as she will potentially do the complete opposite down the track. Oh, I'm sorry, I've just got to sit back for a minute because my feet are killing me. I'm having a drink too, guys. I've got a bottle. I've been drinking water all morning. I had my coffee, had a heap of water. Now I've got some Pepsi Max out here that I really shouldn't be drinking, but that's one of my very few vices these days, some Pepsi Max. Okay. Then potentially, thanks to Jude, we'll have this open up in this sort of way. Thank you, Jude. I really didn't... That's a good one. And then what is going to challenge me is not adding more, stitching more details onto these pieces like laces and Suffolk puffs and things. So potentially I want to set that piece in there. And then we'll have this, and then of course we've got all this orange mirroring, this orange stripe. So I'm quite happy with that. I might even come along and put some lace down here. Yeah, it is good, isn't it? Thank you. Then we've got this one. Now, this was a last minute decision the other night. It was sort of like 4 o'clock in the morning. I decided to stitch this piece of lace on there. And I probably went overboard. I started at the center and I have stitched all the way around, and I've worked my way out, stitching around these lines. I've stitched up the stems and then gone around to try and make sure it sits nice and flat and doesn't buckle down the track. I still need to remove my pen marks. Now this page, this is another piece of vintage French fabric I got from Nairi. As you can see, I've just pinned it in and I haven't decided yet whether it will be stitched in or not. And the reason I'm hesitating is because I just don't want to lose what little bits of wool I have. We've come back to this beautiful Battenberg, which I haven't done that hem yet. Then we've got a piece of that hand-dyed wool, and I have attached that to a piece of linen that came, I think that came in the kit. No, was it a piece I had here? That was a piece I had here actually, that I salvaged from a large table centre or something with these sort of flowers around it. It was actually falling apart, this one. So I then decided to applique that flower on, and I went for the blue because we've sort of got the blue mirroring here, but then I feel like I need to put some blue here somewhere just to balance it a bit. And I think this is partly because I'm a bit OCD, and partly because in all the art training I've done, we're taught to balance what we're looking at. And see, for me to look at that, I don't feel that's balanced. It's not heavy enough on this side. It's too heavy at weight. Like, yeah, it draws the eye straight to here. It needs to be more uniform. So I feel like I need to put something blue over here. It should be a triangle in theory, and that's, you know I don't have to follow those rules, but my brain keeps telling me that I need to. So I'm struggling with that as well. So then you can see these little bits of lace peeking out. This is a stunning lace, this one. And this is actually part of a collar. Oops, I'm falling, okay. This was actually part of a collar, and you can see here, so I probably should step back a little bit. That doily has come through from the back of that quilted square, the feed sack square, but I tried to make a feature out of that, so I wanted that to peek through here again to carry that orange over to balance it a bit. This piece of linen is attached to the other side of that quilted square. Because the square wasn't big enough to do a double spread, I wanted to attach something to it to do the next page, because I didn't want to just stitch the quilted square in on its own, which I could do. I could just have it as a single page. I wanted it a bit more anchored. So I've turned it into a double page by adding that piece of linen. You can see here I've done a hem. And the other thing is, I probably should mention, I have done every single piece of this by hand. There is no machine stitching has been done. It is all done by hand. Needle and thread, one stitch at a time. So as I was saying, I've done the hem on these sides. I didn't want to do the hem on this side. I can't remember. Oh, I do remember why. Because I wanted to attach that piece of lace. So I've done a piece of bias binding down there. Now we've got machinery across the road happening. And that's that beautiful piece of lace that was peeking through. That sounds like a grinder to me, an angle grinder. I wonder if he's doing repairs to his caravan. I think they might be planning to go away over Christmas, because he pulled the caravan out on the weekend, and now I think he might be doing repairs on it. So that's part of that collar. That lace is just exquisite, but I've also done that so you can open it out like this, and that then balances out that lace over here with the Battenberg. So all I think I need to do is get some blue over here a bit. It might not happen, but my eye tells me I need some blue over here. So I've done this in a way that that can be folded in for when it's closed up, and it's not going to hang out and get damaged. Now I tried to make a bit of a feature. Again, you can see I haven't deleted those pen marks, but I tried to attach that other part of that beautiful feed sack quilt block to make a feature out of it. I'm not convinced I was entirely successful, but that's what I've done. So then we get to the other side of this sandwich tray cloth, and again, as you can clearly see, I've attached another feed sack puff, and I think from memory that one came in this kit as well with this linen. Again, I quite like the bits of the back side of the embroidery that peek out. I quite like that. It sort of carries over these little bits of orange that are peeking through. Now this bit I'm not sure about. It just feels like the wrong era to me. I believe it's from the 30s or 40s, this fabric. It was an old apron that I've parted out because it was quite damaged. It was just hand stitched with squares of fabric on point. So I've salvaged those squares of fabric, and this was one of them. Initially I'd just put a piece of vintage bias on this side to neaten it up, you know, not that it's going to be seen, but I just like to try and neaten everything off. And then when I attached it, it didn't look right. Something just didn't work. So I've ended up applying a piece of bias to the front here, and then that sort of carries over that, you know, see we've got a bit of a triangle happening here. We've got orange, orange, orange. So to me that's balanced, that balances the eye. Same with the green, we've got the green, we've got green peeking through here, we've got green in here. So I feel like that's balanced now. before I put that strip on there, it didn't work. I'm not sure why. I feel like it's the wrong vintage, this fabric. I don't think it is. You know, it's potentially, it's supposed to be from the 30s, 40s. I don't think this linen's that old. Yeah, I don't know. There's just something about it that, add a snippet or doily or lace. Yeah, I have tried that, but I haven't found anything that works yet. It might even be because, dog hair, crying out loud. It might even be because to my eye it's not square. See how it flares out here, and but again, I need to embrace the wonk, don't I? Oh my goodness. So we're getting towards the end again. That grinder's bothering me, if you can't tell. So now we're coming to the second last page. I've only pinned that on because I'm not sure yet. This is another little piece of vintage French fabric that I potentially antique. I think they're antique French fabrics that I bought from Nairi. And again, all I did was square this off. I haven't trimmed much off that at all. I'm tempted to round the corners. I'm not sure if I will, but I thought I'd like to applique that on there or do something with that. I might even make another flap yet. I don't know yet. I took it off. That was one of the first pieces I put in. Sorry, I missed that one. Where's my comments gone? The blank, yeah, that's that hand-dyed wool again, Jude. It's very nice, isn't it? That doctor's flannel. So, not sure how I'm going to apply that. As I said, that was one of the first pieces I pinned into this, and I quite like it. If I take it out, it just doesn't work for me. So I think it needs to go back in. It helps balance out that spread for me. I don't like pinning that either because it's going to damage that fabric. So to me, that balances that double spread out once I put that back in. It sort of mirrors this here. It weights it down on both sides. You know, we've got the triangle happening again with the similar tones. So I think that will go on. I just feel like something's missing again. And I might come along later and applique some lace down here, or, you know, I just keep going until I feel like it's finished. So people have asked me before how I know when it's finished. I don't know how to explain. You just sort of get this, I don't know. Maybe I'll be able to explain when I am finished. I don't know how to explain when I know a piece is finished. You sort of just get this feeling, or you sort of just look at it and go, that's it, you know? There's nothing more I can do, and if I do any more, it's just going to be over the top. So there we go. There's the back of that front page again. And then I've ended up making a feature out of this colour coding on the selvage. I quite like that now. I would normally would have tucked that under so you couldn't see it, but I decided to make a feature out of it. And you can see that vintage, that other piece of green Sanderson that I've tucked in there. I don't know if I showed you. I think I did in the last video. I don't know why I've done this, but I just felt like I had to. Instead of just hemming it, I've actually done bias binding to make it all nice and neat. I've done invisible stitch to stitch it down so you can't see it on the front, and I've tried to do that all the way through. Oh, just got to sit back again, guys. My knees are hurting now. It's because I'm leaning forward to talk into the microphone. I'm putting a lot of weight on my joints, so they get very sore. So I was going to sit here and do some stitching with you. What was I up to? Oh, oops, I need to unfold that or it gets too creased and won't sit right. Okay, there's that one. Still not sure about that bit of lace. It's very tactile though. I don't mind the rust on it either. It sort of mirrors these colours here. I'm still not sure about if that's the right piece to put there. That wonk is I'm struggling with still. I've got to tidy that up. That's what I was up to, stitching this. So I've been trying to I cut this thread too long, so it's starting to fatigue. And I always, when I was teaching, I always used to teach my students not to let that happen. And what do? Actually, you can see there, I need to finish off because, can you see there? Oh no, sorry, that was just an extra bit. You can see here though, can you see that tail, how it's fatigued? Now that's an easy fix, you can trim that off. And that's one of the things that causes knots while you're stitching. But if you look closely to where the needle has been, that thread is fatiguing, it's starting to fray, it's starting to split open. And that's because I cut my piece much longer than I should have. And I'm notorious for doing that. I teach my students, only cut your thread from your fingertip to your elbow length, because then it's less likely to fatigue and get tangled and get damaged. What do? Cut it 4 or 5 times that length. I don't preach what I teach. I don't practice what I preach. I can't even get it together. And that's just because I get sick of cutting and restarting. But also because when I do the blanket stitching, I don't like to have to put joins in. I always have to. I never get it all the way around because it's just be ridiculously long. I'm trying to see where I've done a join. There's got to be a join there. There's one. That one stands out like a pimple on a pumpkin. They're not normally that bulky. There's a join there. Let's see if I can find one that doesn't stand out so much. That was a bad join, that one. There's another one. That one stands out a bit too. So there's a join. I know why that's like that. I've just realised it's because when I come in with the thread, instead of just continuing on, I'm doing a knot there and it's adding to the bulk. So I need to come up with a way to anchor that starting point without knotting it like that to add to that bulk. Haven't worked that out yet. It's probably quite simple, but I haven't worked it out yet. Okay, back to this. That's what I've been working on. Oh, my knees again. Crikey. Yeah, I see it. That's my problem. I'm too much of a perfectionist, I think. That's why embracing the wonk breaks my brain. I'm going to remove that doctor's flannel while I'm working on this. So what I've been doing is, oh, my knees, crikey. I'm getting shooting pain, sorry. Oh, I actually need knee replacements and a hip replacement. I know that for a fact. I've been told that, and I keep putting it off, so I'm really struggling at the moment with pain and movement. Maybe I should start a new piece of thread since I'm down the bottom here. So far I have stitched, I think I started about here. It's hard to see without my glasses on. I've done some in there. So I've stitched around here, up here, around here, up there. I must have come back this way. And I've stitched around here, around here, around there. I haven't done these bits yet. I've stitched around there and down there and around there. I've stitched up to here somewhere and down there. I've done that side and then I've come down here. So now I need to come up here and down. So I'm trying to stitch around all the edges. I'll come back and do these. And then I'm also going to try and stitch down these main veins a bit just to make, and this stem to make sure it's secure and won't catch on anything. But I'm also trying to make sure I'm not having any stitches showing on the back side. So in theory, once I press this again, it should be very difficult to see where I've stitched. So I'm trying very hard to do invisible stitches on this side. I mean, you can see that I've done something there, but it's very hard to see where the actual stitches are. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't actually see any. I can't see any stitches from the other side that are exposed on this side. Now, doing it this way is incredibly time consuming, but I do not like to see those stitches, so that's how I do it. Now I can't find, I can hear it. That's one of my hairs this time. I can hear that needle. There it is. So because I've only got, 15 centimetres of thread left, and I'm down the bottom here, I might end this off. And I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to end it off yet. Now the other thing is, this is right up on this, at the edge of this fabric. I'm right in here where I'm ending it off. And the thing is, I'm not going to wrap this around, I don't think, because I don't want it seen on the other side. Let me have a look. Actually, no. I was going to say I could because it'll be covered, but it won't. It's going to stick out. It'll peek out of there. I don't think I want that. So, as I mentioned earlier, I haven't squared this linen off yet and trimmed it. So what I'm mindful of is where I'm ending this off. Once I trim that, I'm going to trim off that notch, that ending off, that securing bit. But then again, the other thing that I've got to remember is I'm not going to leave those raw edges. I'm either going to do blanket stitch or put bias binding on there, so that as long as I put basting stitches over those edges until that's done, that should hold it together. And this needle's that fine, I can't blink and thread it again. There we go. Okay, so I'm just, as I mentioned, I'm just going to try and finish this off. And normally I don't do as many, I don't even know what this is, overhand cast off knotty stitching things. I normally just sort of tuck it all in. But because it's right on that edge, I'm not too concerned about that bulk because it will be trimmed off. So for now, I'm ending it off like that to hold it together. Now I've got a terrible habit of when I do that, I'll just stick a needle any old way. I just stuck it in there. So when I come back with my cotton, I'll then spend the next 10 minutes going, where the hell did I put that needle? I'm dreadful. I just drop them wherever I'm at. I just stick it in the closest thing to me and then can't find it. Now that that needle's sitting there though, I don't know if you can see it from your angle. It's got a bend in it. I didn't notice that until now. And it's not like I've got a shortage of needles. Look at that. I get my favourites though sometimes. I have a run of favourite needles. I can't remember the artist's name. There's a textile artist on Instagram. Some of you might be familiar with her. And she saves all her broken needles and bent needles throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, she stitches them onto a piece of fabric, a piece of linen or something. And it's like an ode to the needles that have served her. And I think that's awesome. I might try and start doing that. And this needle could be one of the first ones to go on. Okay, I finished down there, so I need to come up this side. Now what I'm noticing now is, let's move that out of the way. That's starting to pucker. Why is that puckering? Let's take that needle out. I should have basted this, but the reason I didn't is because these pieces are so thick. It was difficult to get a needle through. Maybe I should go back and baste that because that's starting to pucker and I don't want to secure all those edges and have it puckered at the end. So now I'm looking for a contrasting thread, cotton. There's a cream one. Oh, it's too close to what I'm using. I don't think I've got one out here. And the reason I want to use a contrasting thread is so I can see those basting stitches when I'm pulling them out. Okay, my trusty old needle book that my 5-year-old son stitched for me. He did all these flowers and leaves and look how much blinking dog hairs on that. He was 5 when he did that. So I'm just going to use one of these threads, I think, just to... Oh, I forgot they were in there. I was trying to take patterns from those. Crinoline ladies. Okay, let's use this blue. That might work. Can I pull that out easily? Probably not. I need to take that needle out for starters because that's going to stop me. So I had all these ready for when I was stitching another project ages ago. And I just pull them out instead of spending time to thread every needle again and again and again. I just have them all ready here to go. And I just, in theory, if I've done it correctly, instead of unwinding all that, I should be able to just pull the needle out. There's another thread that's been stitched through it. You should be able to just pull it out and it just comes out instead of trying to unwind it all. I don't know if you can see, it's been caught by another thread in there. Okay, I tried to do a live demo and it backfired. But there you have it. They have been in this needle book for some time, maybe up to 2 or 3 years now, so they might have sort of just felted together a bit. Oh, crying out loud, I've got a bit of a knot there, haven't I? Where's the tail end? Doesn't help that I don't have glasses on. So what I'm doing now is just trying to gently use that tip of that pin to untangle that knot. But the problem with doing this is, because this is stranded cotton, and each strand is mercerized. What happens when I do this is it's splitting this cotton, and it can either tear it or make it fatigue much more quickly. So it's not the best option, but it worked. I got it undone. Now I've still got the needle I'm working with. I haven't anchored that yet, have I? So it was just, say I just dropped it again. It was just lying on the table, so I'm just going to move that out of the way. And I've got this blue cotton, single strand. I'm going to put a knot in this because it's going to come out. So I don't care if I'm going to have a knot at the moment, because this is just, I'm just going to baste this down. Now the reason I'm basting it, as I mentioned earlier, it's starting to pucker. The linen's starting to pucker under the lace, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm just going to try, and this needle's too big. It's going to leave holes too big in this lace, in the linen as well. I'm trying to just baste this lace down onto this linen in the hope that it will stop that from puckering. This is where it's the worst, over here. Now they're not the largest basting stitches, and that's mainly because this lace is quite delicate and I want to try and anchor as much of it as I can to that fabric. I'm still having trouble with that puckering in there. It's because I've stitched this too far up. It's moved. I don't want to have to undo it though. I might be able to just gently manipulate that linen out like that to reduce that puckering. And I think that might have worked. I might just run up there a bit because that's where the biggest issue is. Maybe I won't because I can't get the needle in. I'm also mindful of trying to keep away from the edges because that's a bit scary there, but I can unpick that as I'm stitching it. So what I'm thinking about is I want to try and keep away from the edges because that's where I'm going to do my invisible stitch all the way around to anchor it, to attach it to the linen. However, we can see I'm quite close to the edge there. By the time I've stitched around, I've already pretty well anchored all that. So if that's going to get in the road, if I can't just push it out of the way as I'm going, I can just cut it off, leave the rest of the bits in there and pull them out later. The other thing is I'm going to have travelling across the back of the work, so you need to be a bit mindful of that. Normally it's not an issue because, you know, once you pull the basting out, it's going to come out anyway. What does happen sometimes is the thread that you want to keep in has pierced that tiny bit of cotton. So all you do is you just cut that cotton where it's been pierced and make sure you don't cut the cotton that's anchoring it all together, if that makes sense. If I have it happen, I will show you, but that won't be today because I haven't got any pieces. So now I want to, that's still puckering a little bit in this area. So I want to try and, what I'm doing now is with this pointer finger on the back, I'm sort of just gently pulling that linen down a little bit between my thumb and my forefinger. So it's, because I'm sort of just doing this action, it's technically not stretching the fabric a ridiculous amount. I mean, it's linen anyway. It doesn't have stretch. It should have stretch on the diagonal. Most fabrics do. Yeah, see. So that's why we do bias, because it's got that stretch. But up and down with the warp and weft, there shouldn't be any stretch, and there's not. So as I'm pulling down in this motion, I'm not stretching the fabric because I'm not pulling it hard enough and there's no stretch in there anyway. But what I'm doing is just making sure that that's lying nice and flat against that lace, so we're not going to have that puckering continue. And because I'm all the way down the bottom here, I want to make sure, you know, like over here, because I didn't baste it down, this lace has lifted a tiny fraction, enough to cause a bit that buckling to happen in the first place. So by doing this, stretching this fabric down, basting this lace down, it should be significantly minimizing the chance of any more puckering from happening. So I'm sort of just, there's not a huge amount of, well, I suppose there is. I was going to say there's not a huge amount of thought going into where I'm putting these basting stitches, but I suppose there is actually, because I'm wanting to hold it down enough that there's not going to be any puckering between the linen or the lace. I want to keep away from those edges, but I also want to get close enough to the edges that I'm anchoring it enough that it won't move. And as I mentioned earlier, these basting stitches are quite small because it's not a big piece of fabric, the lace. It's quite small and delicate. So I want to make sure I'm anchoring it enough that it's not going to shift while I'm stitching. Now I'm still sort of pulling the lace out. Because I've anchored all this bottom edge down now, I want to pull in the opposite direction. So I want to sort of pull it upwards. And I am sort of, it's too deep to go from this direction now. So I can sort of work it on a flat surface. See now that, if I sort of pull that out and not stab myself with that pin up there, that works as well. So again, just making sure I'm basting it all down. And ideally, what I should be doing is, I think I've mentioned this on other videos, I should be working from the center outwards, because if I work from the center outwards, you're just sort of pulling it all out as you go and it won't pucker. But because I'd already started stitching and didn't even think that I'd need to baste it, I wanted to work on that area first that was puckering. But in reality, I should have basted it first, and I would have started from here somewhere and worked my way out, probably in a spiral motion. There's another car here, for goodness sake, it's busy today. That's all right, go and lay down. Now, I've already stitched all this down, so I don't have to worry about basting in here at the moment. So I'm going to come back in this direction. I'm trying to avoid these big stitched bits because it's hard to get the needle through, and it's more likely, if I try and force the needle through, it's more likely it's going to tear. So, Willow, please. Again, just gently working this edge outwards. And I am working in a non-conventional motion. She is protecting me. There's a car stopped out the front, and that's not okay. And you know what? If anyone comes up to the door, I often feel like she's going to rip their faces off. But if I have her on this side of the door, completely different. She will lick them to death. So yeah, on the house side, totally different story. Same as if she's in the car. Any strangers approach the car? No, thank you. Again, I'm still trying to pull that out, and it's even more critical because I haven't started from the center. So I need to try and just make sure I'm smoothing that all out. I can check on the table as I'm going, and I've stabbed myself with that pin up there again. And I'm not just looking at it, I'm feeling it. I do a lot more. I will, Jude. She's had a huge cuddle this morning. She was very sooky. She was in my lap and she was cuddling me, and yeah, for ages. Normally she comes over, has a cuddle. She's lucky if she's here for, 30 seconds. But this morning she must have been there 10, 15 minutes. She just wanted all the cuddles. So yeah, a lot of the work I do, especially with the textiles, I think I'm using my fingers more than my eyes. So I'm constantly feeling, making sure there's no puckers, I'm not going to pull that because that's a piece of the lace. So I'll either tuck that under. That's probably what I'll end up doing. Don't want to cut it off because if I do, it will cause that to start to unravel. So I might stick a pin there to try and hold that under. It looks like there's a piece that's been cut off here previously, and that's starting to unravel. So if I pin that down, in theory, you just mentioned, Jude, that your granny taught you to baste everything. I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and she was a dressmaker, so she was always teaching me to baste things down. And you know what? I never did when I was younger because I thought that's a bloody waste of time. I don't need to do that. I'm just going to stitch. And I can guarantee you, I would get to a point where I'd be so frustrated because it's not sitting well, or it's not working the right way, or it's not whatever. And it's because I didn't take the time to baste it. So I still have a lot of people say to me, I don't bother doing that. Why do you spend so much time and energy to baste down your work? But then when I'm finished, those same people will come back and go, oh my goodness, this is beautiful. How have you gotten that so neat? How are your stitches so... And it's because I take the time to do this sort of stuff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I was probably, 6 or 7 when I first started learning. I used to just hang around. Like, I used to go there after school because my parents were working. So I used to stay with my nan. And she was, even though she was retired, oh no, she wasn't retired at the time. She was working, but she was working at David Jones. She was a buyer for David Jones, actually. She was also doing the dressmaking, and she used to specialise in bridal gowns. So unfortunately, I didn't keep all her laces and trims and things. I've kept some of them. There's not many I've got left now because I didn't see the value at the time, and I'm kicking myself. I've still got a few of her things, but I'm kicking myself that I didn't keep more of them. Now that's stitched down already, so I don't have to go in there. I've also studied for many years, from I was about 2019, I think, when I first joined. I joined the Embroiderers Guild. I joined a local sewing group to start with. They were all older ladies mainly in their 60s, 70s and 80s. Some were even older than that. And at the time, a lot of them were like, why are you here? You're too young. They were very standoffish and not very welcoming. But I was expecting my first child. So actually I started before then, a couple of years before then, because it interested me. And I think my mother was going there, and I had time in between study and whatnot, so I ended up going to this embroidery group that still exists, but there's not many members left these days. My mother still goes after all these years. She's been going, it must be 30 odd years now, maybe longer. But from that group, some of the members were in the Embroiderers Guild, and at that stage I had not heard of this Embroiderers Guild, but I would see the work that they would bring into sewing, and I was completely fascinated and in awe. So I then went on a mission to join the guild, and back then I don't know if it's still the same, I haven't been a member for quite some time. You couldn't just join. You had to apply and go on a waiting list. And it was usually until another member had passed away. And then you still couldn't just get in. They would contact you and say that a place had opened up, but they would choose a handful of people, and we actually had to go, and it wasn't just an interview, we had to take samples of our work. It was a bit full on, our particular local embroiderers group. And I'll just stitched that in correctly, so I've pulled that over. I was incredibly anxious, and because some of them, or a lot of them, especially in the Embroiderers Guild, initially looked down their nose at me and thought that I was having a Lenderbin because I was so young. And by the time I'd applied for the guild, I had a newborn baby as well. And yeah, I can't say I was exactly welcomed by all the members to start with, but when they saw my work, when I submitted my portfolio, as it were, at the time, a lot of the attitudes changed quite a bit, and of course I was welcomed into the guild. Oh, absolutely, you're correct, Jude. I often think of my nan as I'm stitching, things she taught me or things she'd said to me, or yeah, so joining the guild was really interesting, and after a while when they saw my work they did embrace me, the majority of them, and a lot of them became very good friends. Unfortunately most of them have now passed. I still talk to one or two of them. There's that bit that I tried to tuck under. Oh no, it's another one. I put the pin on the other one. But those ladies taught me a lot, and a lot of them also became like surrogate grandmothers to my daughter. So she still remembers a lot of them. And until she moved, she was still going to the craft group that was associated with the guild, the local guild. But a lot of those ladies taught me a lot, and I used to participate in some of the workshops with travelling tutors, and I learned a lot from them. And I still, I'll go to stitch things now, and a lot of those memories come flooding back from those different tutors and those different members. But I have noticed that in the guild, they were very strict. There was like a, well, my particular guild was, there was like a guideline, I suppose, guidelines, and there were certain ways we had to do things, certain stitches and certain methods. And I remember one of my tutors, I've mentioned this before, she would make me unstitch it. If I hadn't done it correctly, I'd have to unstitch it and do it again. And at the time I was ropeable, I was feral. I was so annoyed that she made me do that. But now I'm thankful that she did. But in saying that, I'm still quite rigid in those rules, and I struggle to break out of them, and that is why embracing the wonk is so difficult for me to do. But as a result of all that, I ended up being a visiting tutor at the U3A for a few years, on and off. My mother was actually a permanent tutor there for a long time, but I used to get invited by the head tutor every now and then to go and do some tutoring. And I also did a lot of tutoring in the same vocation at the WEA, or for the WEA, and through an art studio I worked at. And I didn't just teach stitching and embroidery, I taught fibre art and warm glass art and a lot of these for the WEA. PMC, silversmithing, lead lighting, ceramics, quite a few other things I used to teach. So macrame. And that's, a lot of that really stemmed from the initial days when I was doing the guild and had joined that little embroiderers group, local embroiderers group. Now that basting thread has run out. I haven't ended it off. I normally just do a little overstitch. It's a bit short, isn't it? I've been distracted, rambling on with stuff. I might just try and do a little bit of an anchor stitch there. Yeah, wow, that's really interesting, Jude. I was really interested, years ago I came across some indigenous weavings. They were bags actually, like string bags, and they were quite old. I'm not sure how old, but the people I spoke to said they were potentially 50, 60, 70 years old or older. They were old, old weavings. And yeah, I found out they were indigenous weavings, and it completely fascinated me. I've still got one here somewhere. Do you think I can find it? It was incredibly precious. I had it wrapped up and in a container for a long time. I don't know where it ended up, but it should be still here somewhere. And I wanted to go and learn more about it. And at the time, it wasn't, how can I explain? I wasn't exactly welcomed into that culture at the time, but I've only recently, literally only in the last few weeks, been speaking to some Indigenous elders, and they were like, we would more than welcome you now. Come along, come and talk to us, come and... So I'd like to try and find that and potentially donate it, you know, because it shouldn't belong to me. It's an old, technically it's an old artifact. And I bought it at a second-hand shop years ago. And it was incredibly old when I bought it. So I know I've got at least one here still. So hopefully I will come across that, and I'd like to donate it and potentially find out a little bit more information about it. But I did find out that it was made from grass, and they sort of rolled it down their leg to form the I want to say rope. It was finer than rope. And then they used that, like joined all these bits together by rolling it down their leg, and then used that to create this bag, like a string bag. But that's pretty much all I know about it. So I really hope I come across that again. It should be here somewhere. I want to learn about before we had our big fires here in 2019 and 2020. Oh really, flax is linen, so that's really interesting. I thought it was yeah, so it wouldn't have been a flax that I know, like this is made from flax technically, so it wouldn't be that exact kind of flax, would it? It'd be more of an indigenous, I'd imagine. Potentially it could have been flax, because I'd imagine that flax may have been brought over on the first fleet. Yeah, okay. So I guess potentially, as far as timelines go, it could have been made from flax, but I don't think it was. It's different. flax, I've found when I've been processing it, it goes quite hairy, which is interesting. I need to look into that a bit more. But anyway, I keep going off track, don't I? What I want to find out about, just before, I think, the 2019-2020 fires we had here, I first learned about Indigenous burns. And as a firefighter, I wanted to learn more. And I still want to learn more, because what I have learned, the very small amount I've learned so far, is that when we do our hazard reduction burns, and when we do our, I suppose, interventions as well, I think we should be utilising those tools and techniques, because what I know about Indigenous burns is that they're a low and slow burn for the most part, and there is a lot of science behind that. And the reason, like, even only 5 years ago, we would go in to do a burn, and we would go in with all guns blaring, you know. We would be using drip torches, and we'd be doing double lines, and we'd be putting these fires in hot and fast to get it over and done with. They've got a very different attitude now. Again, just in the last 5 years, I suppose, even in the last 3 years. So more of us are starting to realise that these Indigenous burns are incredibly more beneficial, and I don't understand why it's taken them so long to realise. I think it's probably taken this big disaster, this big fire event that we had, before people started to take notice, unfortunately. So my understanding is that these low and slow burns, which I have participated in some that have essentially ended up being done that way, but technically weren't Indigenous. I actually found out recently I did attend an Indigenous burn that I didn't realise at the time was an Indigenous burn, and it was very low and slow. And we got to one point where we had to ended up getting the leaf blower out to try and move it along a bit, because it was just not happening. But the science behind them, very basic science that I'm aware of at the moment, is that the low and slow burn gives the Indigenous plants and grasses more of an opportunity to regenerate and to recover. And, you know, a lot of our Indigenous and native plants need fire to regenerate. But if we put in these hot and fast fires, it kills them a lot of the time. They're too intense. And it also gives the animals time to move out of that fire. So I am really interested in doing some workshops on Indigenous burns, and I do believe there is an organisation up the valley that does them, and I'm trying to convince our brigade to send some of us to go and learn about it. I know some of the other brigades have gone and attended and learned, and that might be the way we're encountering more and more of these Indigenous burns taking place. But yeah, I really think more of us need to learn, and I actually think the service should be doing it. We should be getting taught how to do these burns. But anyway, that's my opinion. I find it incredibly fascinating. I'm just looking for another thread. I've got a big tangled mess over here in my net. I've got other threads, but I thought I may as well use these instead of throwing them away. I do have an Ort jar as well somewhere that I have threads in, and I do use those threads in that Ort to make things as well when I'm not so pressured for time. Getting really distracted in this video, and I mean, I think I always do really. I go off on all sorts of tangents. And that's another reason why I'm so surprised that so many people sit and watch these. Oh goodness. I mean, I'm grateful that you do, but I don't know if I could sit through one of my videos. Isn't that interesting? Okay. This needle is way too big for what I'm doing, but I'm too lazy to go and look for another one. Oh my gosh, this thread, oh, there's another one stuck to it. So again, I'm just using this to baste with, and again, I wanted a contrasting thread so I can see it when I pull the basting stitch out. Just going to do a knot to start it, because it's a waist knot, because it doesn't matter. It will be coming out. And I'm going to continue to baste, try and baste some of this. These pieces, these wheat ears are a lot, crikey. I was going to say a lot more difficult, and then I started to say a lot harder at the same time, so I got a bit tongue-tied. So these wheat ears and these flowers are quite thick and dense, so they're a bit more challenging to baste down. If I go in there, I'm not going to be able to stitch it. It's going to get in the way. This is, yeah. I don't think that's going to happen, to be honest. Unless I sort of go in between just to hold it in place. I can't, it's too difficult to stitch through it. So maybe I can just sort of tack in between these spaces just to try and hold it in place a bit, because I know if I don't, as I'm stitching it down, it will move if I don't, and I'll end up with a wheat ear leaning up in this direction if I don't at least try and tack it down in some way. Now that end bit's a lot easier to stitch through, probably because it's starting to come unravelled. Oops, pulled that too tight. We don't want to pucker. Get with the program. Now I'm going to try and just come back down there. And see, I'm tearing that lace as I'm doing it with the needle. That's another thing. I didn't want that to pull that back, so I'll leave that a bit loose. I think this, is it that one? I've got some threads in here that I've hand dyed actually. Oh, absolutely, Jude. I do know that some people are working on it, but it terrifies me, you know, because even just in my lifetime, the damage I've witnessed, and I mean, it's not just me, obviously, but the damage we've witnessed to the environment, and even just, I get really distressed with the amount of progress. I always have, even as a kid. It used to really upset me when they'd clear bushland and put new houses up, and it still does. I tend to switch off to it a bit now. But the amount of new estates that have gone in locally, even just in the last 2 or 3 years, is astonishing, and it really upsets me. It's another reason why I'm glad to move away from here, because it upsets me so much. You know, we're losing so much habitat. I did read recently though that the new Lord Mayor from Newcastle is trying to protect more of the bushland in the Newcastle Council anyway. I know of at least one area where we've attended some bushfires that tend to run very well when they get in there. He wants to now protect, that's one of the areas he wants to protect from being built on. And I hope he's able to, because, you know, at this rate, I feel like there's hardly any bushland left, and nearly every time I go out, and I don't go out a lot these days because I don't have a vehicle. I can't afford to run a vehicle anymore, so I share one, and it's not mine, so I don't go out a lot, but nearly every time I do, I'm encountering more and more wildlife on the roads around here, and it's not okay. Even the amount of wildlife that turns up here in my yard. It's crazy. And they're nearly all injured. They all need some sort of assistance. And that distresses me. I don't like it at all. And when I was younger, I used to try really hard to do something about it. And I think I just got tired. It just felt really overwhelming. The new crew that I'm with haven't, well, some of them have because I've worked with them before, but they haven't all witnessed yet. When I go out on the fire ground, I carry a backpack with me, and a lot of them have said, why do you bring that? You know, everything's on the truck that you need. I like to pack my own first aid kit. I have, I pack things like my own Hydralyte and stuff like that. But I also try and carry a bit of it's not exactly a first aid kit, a kit for wildlife, because more often than not, we encounter wildlife on the fire ground. So I usually have a couple of pillowcases that I use if anything's burned or injured. I can put them in, or, you know, come across snakes or lizards, which we've done. Possums, they go into the sack to be picked up by wildlife carers. And I also carry containers, and I carry the containers in my pocket. So I have previously collected frogs in the containers until the fire has passed through, and then I put them back. Same with small reptiles, things like that. So yeah, I did have a bit of a reputation for they all laugh at me, but I still do it. I'm still actually just putting my kit together again because I hadn't been out for a few years, and I'm only in the last 12 months starting to get back at it. I was a bit too unwell to go out, so I had a bit of a break and only recently started to get back to it. So I'm still sort of putting my kit together because I can't, of course I didn't write everything down. I got to a point where I had everything I needed and I didn't write it all down, so I'm still remembering pieces as I go along. This daisy is taking quite a bit of basting because it's... Oh look, they're venomous. Red belly black snakes are venomous, but the amount of red bellies I've come across in my time, and it'd have to be 30, 40 maybe more. I have not come across an aggressive one yet. They're very docile snakes. I have handled them. I was previously trained in reptile handling, but I don't have my license anymore. So I do know how to handle them. However, when you see the reptile handlers on social media and on TV and that, I was not taught to handle them that way. I was taught by Eric Worrell and his team from the reptile park, and I was taught to pick them up behind the back of the head, not the tail. It is a bit more riskier to go in, but we were also taught techniques on how to do that. You know, we'd use a tool. We wouldn't just, well, I have done, just run in with my hand. It depends on the species and a few other things as well. But I was always taught to pick them up by the back of the head. That's a big no-no these days, but that is still my method of choice because that's what I know, and I haven't learned how to do it safely the other way. I actually only spoke to my daughter the other day and said that when I move down there, that's one thing I'm thinking I'd like to get back into, to do reptile handling so I can do rescues again that I haven't done for many years. I would like to be able to do that again. And yes, I have handled red bellies. I've handled eastern browns as well. I used to, when I was a kid, I knew they were venomous, but I used to rescue them from around the neighbourhood, and if I wasn't able to re-release them on that same day, I would keep them under my bed until I could release them the next day. We were only talking about it yesterday, actually, about what a horrible child I used to be. At one stage I had snakes, lizards, frogs, turtles, birds, all sorts of things stashed under my bed until they could either recover or be released. And the reason they were under my bed is because I didn't want my dad to know that I had them. Oh, goodness me. So yes, I have handled a lot. I have, the only reptile I've been bitten by was a blue-tongue lizard. Yeah, pretty much. Mum once said to me that she learned very quickly to not react, to just go, oh yeah, okay, that's nice, because if she did react, apparently I would sort of say, Mum, look, you know, it's not going to hurt you, have a good look. So if she just said, oh yeah, that's nice, that's good, I'd say, I'd be happy, and off I'd go. Yeah. The things I used to get up to when I was younger. So I've never actually, the only reptile I've ever been bitten by was a blue-tongue lizard, and that was because I was doing a demonstration at a school, and I was trying to show the kids their teeth. They've got sort of plates with little ridges and little sharp teeth. And I just got a bit too cocky with this lizard that I had handled many times, and it grabbed my finger and wouldn't let go, and it pretty much degloved my finger from just behind my fingernail. I lost my fingernail. And then of course I got an infection because they've got so much bacteria in their mouth. But I've never been bitten by a venomous snake. I've never been bitten by... The only snake I've been bitten by was a little baby python that I was helping relocate, and it tried to constrict me and I couldn't stop laughing at it, so it grabbed hold of my hand and I couldn't stop laughing even more because it was so tiny and it was trying to be so tough, and it wasn't having any impact on me at all, that I couldn't stop laughing. But yeah, I have been bitten by a redback spider though, and that made me very sick. We were in a remote location camping, and the nearest medical help was about 2.5 hours drive away. And it took me about half an hour to realise I'd actually been bitten, because I got bitten on the bum when I sat on the dunny, on the long drop in the bush. And about half an hour later, I started to get this intense pain. And I asked my partner at the time to have a look what was happening, because the pain was excruciating. And he had a look and he said, oh my goodness, there's a bite there, and it's really swollen, it's very angry, it's not looking good. And he went up to we were staying on a property, he ended up going up to the house to ask if he could ring for medical support. And they wanted to send a helicopter in, and I said, no way, you're not going to airlift me out of here. It's not that bad. Okay. Opossum. So I refused to be airlifted out, and I said, look, I've got some Phenergan here. I'm just going to take a cup of Phenergan and try and wait it out. So that's what I did. By the next morning, I was violently ill, and that lasted for about 10 days, but I didn't get to see a doctor until about a week later, because we were so remote. Well, I mean, 2.5 hours drive, but it was a very difficult drive out. So yeah, when I told the doctor what I'd done, he said, well, you did the right thing anyway. So I did have an idea because I have done remote area first aid and I've done a lot of that sort of stuff before. So I knew what I had to do and I had an idea that I was going to be okay. But I was incredibly ill. It made me really sick for about 10 days, 10, 12 days. Vomiting, fevers, itchiness, had an allergic reaction to it, so I was swelling at the side, it got infected, I was itchy, it was just horrible, but I was okay. I'm just trying to think what else. I've got that many stories, it's not funny. So it's starting to get, it's coming over overcast. With any luck we'll get, I don't know if we want more rain or not, we need the rain, but it just adds to the humidity at the moment and all the insects come out and it's coming over overcast, so we might get rain this afternoon or this evening. I think they had predicted another storm, but they've also predicted, no I don't, you can't, unless you're you can't just carry any venom. It's very complicated. There are many different kinds of anti-venom. Well, not many, there are different kinds, and there is a broad spectrum one that can be used for a lot of bites, but it's I believe it's very difficult to get here and it would be very expensive unless you admitted to hospital for it to be administered. There's different antivenoms for different bites, and obviously they've got a very short shelf life, I believe, and they're very expensive, and it's just not really a viable option. If I got bitten in duty, they'd just call an ambulance or a helicopter in and lift us out and go to hospital. It'd be pretty rapid. I've had an incident on the fire ground was at Putty, actually, at the TJ's fire. So it was at the beginning of that monster fire we had. I was out on the fire ground. It wasn't a bite, but I collapsed on the fire ground, and then my colleagues went down, and then I found out that the assistant commissioner went down on the same fire ground on the same day. It was a horrendous day. A lot of us dropped that day for different reasons. It was a bit complicated. It was a combination of the heat, the dryness, the food we were given was off, so we all ate, we all started throwing up, and then we just collapsed. So the air conditioners weren't working on the trucks. Normally if we start to overheat, we get in the truck and cool down. None of the air conditioners were working because we were out in bull dust and it was so fine that all the vents were clogged up and it just shut down all the air conditioning units, so we weren't able to cool down when we overheated. So we ended up getting in the trucks. One of my colleagues was still able to drive us out. So he drove us out, and we just drove out to the staging area, and there was a buoy wall there full of water, and they stripped us off and put us in the buoy wall to cool down. It was interesting though, my colleagues became very protective of me. I think because I was a woman and I stripped down to my underwear, a few of the other guys were looking a bit, so it was really interesting to see my colleagues from my brigade being so protective. It was good, but it was unexpected. It was good. So while we were in that buoy wall, they radioed for air support to have us lifted out, and again I'm like, you're not going to airlift me out of here, no way, I'm not being airlifted out, I'm just going to ride it out, and that's what I did. So that was a tough day, that one. But yeah, anything like that, if we're in difficult locations and we get bitten and it's difficult, like if they can't drive an ambulance in, no, they couldn't drive an ambulance in there because you'd need a four-wheel drive. So they just send a helicopter in, they find a clearing or they make a clearing. There were earth movers out there on the fire ground, so if they weren't able to find a clearing to land the chopper, they would just make one. There was actually a chopper at that staging area where we were. It was big enough for them to land a chopper, and there was one there, but I refused to get on. So once you cool down and hydrate again, you pretty well come good. get some electrolytes in, and maybe a bit of a snack, and you come good again most of the time. I always have. So, and the other guys with me did too. You've got no idea, Jude. Get Ashley started, and if you had any idea of the things we've been through, I've been told many times that I need to write a book about it, because a lot has happened. A lot of things that people say, what the heck, no way. Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm not as active as I used to be, mainly because I'm having trouble with my joints at the moment. But if I know I'm going to be safe and not put my colleagues at risk, I will go out. I went to a hazard reduction recently because I knew it was going to be a gentle day. The terrain wasn't great. It was very rocky, and it was steep, and we had, train was a little challenging. I've been on much worse, but when my joints are this bad, it makes it a bit challenging. And the only other thing on that day that made it challenging was the amount of leeches. By the time I got back to the station, my gear was soaked with blood because I didn't realise I had leeches on me. And I had to strip off in the engine bay, and there were just leeches dropping off me everywhere. I should write the book. I mean, even just about my life and what I've been through is incredibly interesting. I didn't think it was, but the more people I talk to, they're like, you need to write a book. You need to write a book about this. This is insane. But because I've had a couple of serious brain injuries, I have bits of my memory missing, and that's where my daughter helps. She'll help me fill in the blanks, and my sister helps me fill in some blanks as well. So potentially I could write the book, but there's so much to put into it. It's huge. It's crazy. I have thought about it. It might be something to write further down the track, because I've actually been talking to my daughter about starting another business. So it looks like at this stage, when I move, we're going to set up another business. It's bloody hard work, but like I said to her, we can dictate our days, because she's chronically ill as well. We can dictate what days we work, and I've got it all worked out. I know what I want to do. I mean, I've had businesses in the past, and I've struggled to fill in some of the gaps. Like, how am I going to do this? How is that going to happen? What am I going to do about this? How's it all going to come together? There's been some components in the previous businesses I've had that I just haven't been able to fill that in, and I think that's why they've failed. Well, not exactly failed. I think I've just given up because it just got too hard with them. But this time it's very clear. I've been writing things down. I've been planning. I know what I want to do. I know how I want to do it. I know how I want to get started. I know how I want to expand if that gets to that point. I'm getting really excited about it, but it's still at least a couple of years down the track, because it won't happen until I move. And then initially the business will be run from the house, because it won't be viable to open a bricks and mortar store to start with. And I know it will be successful, but it depends how much work we want to put into it. And yeah, absolutely, Jude. Challenge is not failure. And I know that, and I usually say that to other people. Isn't that funny? Or speed bumps. They're just speed bumps in life. Or challenges, yeah. You're right. And oh, Jesus I just straightened my knee and it got caught on my knee somewhere behind the patella, and it cracked, and that really hurt. You may have even heard it crack. But I'm waffling again now, and I really need to go because I still haven't wrapped all these parcels, and I'm really hoping that I can put them all in the mailbox on Monday. So I want to try and get them finished, and I've still got a few more items I want to try and upload today and tomorrow, or it might be tomorrow now because it's getting dark and I haven't photographed them yet. I've come across a few more things as I've been packing, and I was hoping to pop them up, so if anyone wants me to slip them into their parcels that I'm sending out on Monday, I can do that. But I'm wasting time sitting here now, so yeah, I probably should go and stop waffling. Hopefully I can come back with progress on this needle book. Ideally, I would like to I think I responded to that, Jude, when after I put Willow in the shower. I think I did, unless I forgot to press send. I've lost my train of thought. Oh, the needle book. Ideally, I would love to have been able to record every step as I've been doing it and putting it together. But it's not realistic for me at the moment. I've got all these, I'm doing this de-stash, which takes up most of my day every day. There's a lot of work involved. And I just tend to do some stitching when I'm either waiting for appointments or on the fire truck or in meetings, or 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll do a bit here and there. So it's not a viable option for me to sit down and show you everything I'm doing as I'm doing it. So at the moment, all I can offer is progress as I'm moving along. So I will aim to come back maybe next week with, hopefully I've got some more progress done. I don't know. I think over Christmas, I don't even know which day Christmas Day is. I've lost track of what day it is. I've got no idea. I've been so focused on getting these parcels done. Christmas Day I'm going to my sister's. I think we're having breakfast, lunch and dinner there. So I'll probably be there all day, but that'll depend on where Willow is as well. I usually take her there with me, but I don't think I'm allowed to take her this year. So I don't like leaving her on her own. Like, she won't be on her own. She'll be at Mum and Dad's with our other Great Dane. But I don't like being apart from her that long. She gets distressed and I don't like doing that. And so I don't know if I'll stay there all day. I always take my stitching to my sister's, but I haven't seen her for a while, so once we start chatting, I usually get really wrapped up in conversation and don't get any stitching done. I don't know if anything's been done on New Year's Eve. Sometimes we go to her place, but in recent years they go to events, so we haven't been doing that. So I'll probably just be sitting at home stitching. And then we're usually back at her place on Australia Day. We have a pool and a darts competition. We've been doing that for years. And she's got a beautiful mineral pool as well. I haven't been in it for ages either because it's too cold for me, but I'd love to be able to get in it over the break. And yeah, my point is, I should have some time to get some stitching done. So next time, hopefully next week when I come back, I will have done some more and we would have had more progress. And I might have even been able to get some more work done on another needle book, another of the several that I've started. That feels like a big effort at the moment, but I'm going to go because, as I've already mentioned again and again, I've got things to do. It's getting dark. And now my neighbours are home and they're getting very boisterous, so that's going to interfere as well. So I'm going to sign off, guys, before it gets it's getting a bit mental. Their little French bulldog's gotten out by the sounds of it, and they're after her. But anyway, I'm going to go. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining me. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being so interested in my stories and my stitching and my all the things. And hopefully I'll be able to come back next week with another one. And you know, thanks again. I really appreciate you guys. And until we meet here again, be safe. Probably won't be here before Christmas, so have a great festive period, and you know, be safe as well. And yeah, I hope you have some regenerative and peaceful periods over the break. I can't even get my words out. So okay guys, thanks again. I'm going to sign off and I'll see you later.